I'm an over-fostered, unadopted, aged-out foster care survivor. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an advocate, and I'm definitely not a constitutional scholar. I'm just a guy, and nothing I say or do should be interpreted as legal advice. This is just a public service announcement for the parents that are in an open CPS case right now, based on my research and my opinion. This beast system should never be assumed inferior to your great constitutional rights scholarly mind. Make no mistake, you are fighting the oldest, most powerful system ever created from realm to matrix. If you only knew the entire multi-billion and trillion-dollar beast structure using the same technologies that our millionaire board members, billionaire investors, and military rely on, actually just go look it up. If anything is fallen technology, this would be it. We gotta tighten up. Fact, constitutional arguments are not slaying CPS cases like you think they are. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but the variables have way more to do with it than the rights do. There are no nationwide statistics that specifically track cases dismissed solely due to constitutional arguments. However, we can use related data from authoritative sources to paint an undeniable picture. Here's the overwhelming power of the state. The National Council of Juveniles and Family Court Judges, the NCJ-FCJ, has stated that in many jurisdictions, default judgments, that's where the parents don't show up or effectively participate, account for a significant portion of case outcomes. When parents do fight, they are facing a system where, according to American Bar Association, the parents are unrepresented or underrepresented in the majority of the cases. So what this means? The system is not designed for a complex legal battle. So let's look at the most drastic state action, termination of parental rights, the TPR. According to data from the Administration for Children and Families, in a recent year, there were over 64,000 children waiting for adoption after parental rights had been terminated. So, if constitutional arguments were a silver bullet, we would see a massive number of successful appeals based on these grounds. But we do not. The vast majority of trial court decisions, even arguably flawed ones, are upheld. When a case is dismissed or a child is returned, it's almost always for one of these procedural or evidence-based reasons, which have been spun into constitutional fairy tales and then put up for sale. The reality, the state's evidence was weak or non-existent. The risk was malicious or a mistaken report. The state had no actual evidence of abuse or neglect, or the state failed to provide reasonable efforts, which federal law requires that the state show that it made the efforts to keep the family together. If they didn't, the case can be weakened. This is a statutory argument, it's not a constitutional one. Then there's the procedural errors. A deadline was missed, the paperwork was faulty, or a caseworker failed to appear. The court dismisses without prejudice, meaning that they could just refile later. Sometimes it's just a win for the future. Here's an example that I found over and over and over. The caseworker entered your home without a warrant. That's a Fourth Amendment violation. Case dismissed. The reality is the judge acknowledged that the entry was questionable. However, they ruled that the photos that the caseworker took inside are still admissible because the primary purpose was child welfare, not a criminal investigation. The tainted evidence is allowed and the case proceeds. That's Wyman versus James, 1971. The Supreme Court ruled that a welfare caseworker's home visit is not a criminal search. Refusal is grounds for terminating benefits. So, let's stop pretending that this runs on your pocket constitution that was written on parchment 200 years ago. While this system is written in Latin on a 900-year-old operating system with the crown logo burned into the kernel. Parens Patriae, parent of the country. Roll the tape all the way back. I just mentioned this like 3 weeks ago. So, 13th century, where kings weren't elected, they were anointed as your divine ruler by birthright. The King's Council and the chancellors start granting equity where rigid common law fails. Vulnerable people, orphans, idiots, lunatics, they all get parked under the crown as wards. That became the Court of Chancery, the king's conscience. Translation, the sovereign reserves the right to seize guardianship for their good. That's the seed. 14th to 17th century, Chancery grows teeth. If the king says the child's best interest requires intervention, your bloodline is the suggestion. Parens Patriae becomes a doctrine with muscles, not a loophole, it's the spine. 17th to the 18th centuries, the king's bench and the chancery split the roles, but the crown's parental power just kept maturing. There's no jury, no criminal burden. Equity calibrates outcomes by conscience, not guilt. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because you're living in that echo today. Then came the American Revolution. We tossed the monarch, we kept the firmware. The state Supreme Courts absorbed Parens Patriae under sovereign police power and equity. The truth? America killed the king, but we kept the crown and we wrote it into code. Ex parte cross. In 1839, a father argued that his daughter was imprisoned without a trial. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court dropped the legal hammer. They ruled that the right of parental control is a natural, but not an inalienable right. Let me be crystal clear on that. Not inalienable means that it can be severed. It's a privilege granted by the state. It's not a right based on your humanity. The state is the owner and you're just a licensee. Your Supreme Court ruled that into existence. America killed the king, but we kept his crown, and we placed it on the head of every family court judge in the country. No crime necessary, for the child's good. That line never got rolled back, it got industrialized. So when you start screaming about your rights, the court doesn't hear a scholar. They see a malfunctioning component on the assembly line. Let's keep going. Late 1800s, 1899 in fact, Cook County introduces juvenile court. It's the first juvenile court in America, and it sounds compassionate. It reads like, save the children, but in code, it's a specialized equity engine for Parens Patriae. Behind the lace curtains, no juries, relaxed evidence, best interests are standard, and due process is now a vibe, not a wall. Then the progressive era to the New Deal, the birth of the administrative law, agencies bloom, rulemaking replaces legislators day to day, and we get the Administrative Procedure Act of 1946. So agencies can run government on rails. Translation, a parallel legal universe with hearings that look like court, smell like court, but they're not court. Lower burdens, more discretion, perfect staging areas for the protective systems. America didn't abandon monarchy, we privatized it. We took the king's divine right and we gave it to social workers with tablets and judges with quotas. Then, 1974, the CAPTA, the hotline era. States must build detection and reporting systems to get money. The state's microphone moves into your living room. 1980, the AACWA, foster care and adoption funding frameworks. Then in 1997, we were blessed with the Adoption Safe Families Act. Permanency timelines, the 15 out of 22 months clock started, and Title IV money learned how to sprint. Thank you. 2000 to 2010, we got SDM, the Structured Decision Making, and the CCWIS, the Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System. That's the predictive risk scores, the dashboards, the vendor middleware, so that evidence-based becomes the shield and algorithm-based becomes the sword. In 2016, CCWIS modernized in order to compress your life into fields, flags, and feeds. Today, November 2025, you live in the stack. Top layer smiles, bottom layer bites, and every layer sits on Parens Patriae like concrete. Every time a family walks through those glass doors, the doctrine boots up again. Your life becomes input. Your compliance becomes throughput. Parens Patriae version 2025, still sovereign, still sacred, and still running. Now, here's how it actually runs, step by step, today, and why your amendments sometimes bounce off like foam darts. Step 1, the knock. This is the administrative jurisdiction. That caseworker at your door with the clipboard in hand and the fake-ass smile, they're just doing a welfare check. This isn't court, it's the agency's playground. Pure administrative action. No judge, no jury. They're just there to probe and prod, then plug your life into the matrix. If you refuse entry, that's non-cooperation. It's risk plus 10 to your risk score. Poverty noted, that's neglect proxy. Med sitting out, that's inability marker. It's a data harvest, not due process. Your Fourth Amendment, they say that's for criminal cops. These are protective visits. They're civil assessments. And under Parens Patriae umbrella, the state says it's just screening for child safety. You're not a suspect, you're a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet triggers the petition, which brings up step 2, the petition. They file a petition and boom, game changes, you've just been served. This piece of paper is your ticket out of administration land and into the real Thunderdome. Step 3, the courtroom. Your juvenile family court jurisdiction. Parens Patriae activated. Welcome to the main event. You are now in a judicial court, but it's not a criminal court. It's a Parens Patriae court. The judge takes off their impartial referee hat and puts on the crown of the king. America killed the king, but kept his crown, and we placed it on the head of the state. So when you stand in front of that judge, you're not standing before a neutral referee, you're standing before a representative of the state parent. Your pocket constitution is useless here. You're waving a consumer rights pamphlet at a king. Your I know my rights speech, it isn't a defense, not in Parens Patriae court. It's seen as evidence that you're prioritizing your own ego over your child's safety. You are literally testifying against yourself. And if you plead the Fifth in criminal court, silence can't be used against you. But here, silence gets coded as failure to rebut. Your quiet becomes their evidence. Sixth Amendment, I want to confront my accuser. There is no human accuser. There is a case narrative and a risk score. Try cross-examining a dashboard. These aren't your rights in this room. These are the scripts for your own execution. Step 4, the chancery jurisdiction. This is the oldest layer, the king's court with a new coat of paint. Equity, best interest of the child. This is where Parens Patriae isn't a doctrine, it's gravity. The judge isn't deciding whether you get to keep your rights. The judge is performing the state's duty as the parent. Your argument for liberty gets reframed as hostility to the child's welfare. You're swinging at caseworkers while the crown signs the order. Gravity is a bitch. Now, stitch those jurisdictions together with code. The administrative layer, that equals intake and ingestion. It speaks SDM trees, screening tools, structured narratives. Every no is a non-cooperation event. Every why is adversarial, and every tier is an emotional dysregulation cue. It feeds the CCWIS with timestamps, GPS pings, provider notes, and referral outcomes. What's your future set? Then the judicial layer, that's the validation authorization. The petition wraps admin data into legal language. Facts sufficient, imminent risk, reasonable efforts made. This judge isn't testing truth. The judge is testing whether the file satisfies the process. The burden is lower, the timeline is faster, and the hearing is shorter. The printouts beats your mouth. Then the chancery layer. This is the deployment. Equity flips from what happened to what must be done. Services ordered, placements assigned, visitations rationed, compliance tracked, and all of it routes back into the admin as a new data. It's a loop. You're not being judged once, you're being rescored continuously in real time. And yes, let's talk about the algorithm, because in 2025, the star witness isn't a teacher, it's a model. It is the legal doctrine that allows the state to strip you of your child because a predictive algorithm said you might be a risk. Not because you are one, because you might be. You cannot cross-examine the Eckerd model, and you can't confront structured decision-making. You cannot subpoena the Traverse dataset or the Safe Measures risk slider. Imminent risk is a prediction rendered by code trained on past removals, poverty proxies, and convenience labels. The Constitution has no amendment for that. You're quoting parchment to silicone. Your Fourth Amendment, I would not cite that mid-visit. If you do, watch the notes update in real time. Parent cites criminal search law during civil welfare check. That's a red flag. Fifth, they log non-responsive, resistant to services. It's another flag. Sixth, they'll smirk because your accuser is a petition plus a probability score. The 14th, they nod because they'll process you. They'll process you straight through the pipeline. Your first, your prayer group becomes ideological rigidity. And your 13th, you call services forced labor and they call it a case plan. Every right you assert becomes a variable. Every variable becomes a score. You shout fourth, it logs criminal framing. You plead fifth, it logs non-responsive. You cite 14th, it logs process familiarity, possible coaching. And you think you're asserting power, but the model thinks that you're proving risk. That's the trap. The louder you fight, the richer the data set. You want receipts? Look at the structure. Hotline captures allegations. Screening tags it with narrative codes. Intake writes your first risk score, and investigation collects corroborations. Dirty dishes, late rent, new boyfriend, missed meds, each becomes a high weight factor. Poverty becomes unsafe environment. Grief becomes unresolved trauma. Fatigue becomes lack of protective capacity. And the system loves synonyms that sound like psychology but act like handcuffs. In coder terms, your life is normalized into fields that travel well and resist your explanations. Then the petition hits, the emergency custody under Parens Patriae. The hearing window is tiny. You scramble. Your advocate friends tell you just assert your rights. I've seen this many, many times. And when you do, the transcripts label it argumentative. The software calls it instability. The supervisor says non-cooperative, and the CASA says that you lack insight. The judge reads best interests and acts like the state. That's what the doctrine is designed to produce. You're literally writing the state's case against you with your own mouth. Look at it through the 2025 eyes. Admin collects, judicial authenticates, chancery deploys, and all of it writing the same 900-year kernel. So what do they really mean by best interest? It's equity as policy, updated to 2025. It absorbs hearsay as context, and it welcomes future casting as preventive care. It downgrades your rights to considerations, and it prioritizes state duty over family autonomy. And if you resist, the narrative engine writes you as the threat. That's the dark psychology baked in, framed inversion. Your self-defense gets coded as proof. Every one of these is another brick, and together they build clear and convincing. Then we arrive at the end game. This is Stantosky versus Kramer. They promise termination by clear and convincing. When the state predicts you won't fix fast enough. Not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but prediction beyond your budget. That's not justice, that's throughput. Listen, if anyone is selling you constitutional magic bullets, then they're trying to tell you to take a knife to a drone strike. I'm not clowning the Constitution, I'm clocking the venue. You're not in one court, you're in three, stacked. Admin to collect, judicial to authorize, and chancery to law. All of it riding on Parens Patriae. Same crown, new robe, and upgraded for 2025 with telemetry and dashboards. So here's how you survive the opening volley without feeding the beast. First, stop feeding labels, short answers only. Document everything and ask for written questions. Demand the record, not the argument. Make them validate data points. Who entered it? When? From what source? Don't shout rights, assert scope. Is this a criminal search or a civil welfare check? If it's civil, ask for the policy citations, screening tools, decision trees. And if they reference risk, ask which model, which variables, which thresholds, which validation study, what error rates. You're not arguing with the person anymore, you're interrogating the system. So subpoena the algorithm, motion for discovery of model parameters, demand audit logs. Who accessed your record? Who edited the fields? Which values changed and when? Ask for the CCWIS data dictionary and the SDM codebook. force, source of truth declarations, school notes, provider notes, hearsay notes. If they claim reasonable efforts, demand the service catalog and the waitlist metrics. If they claim imminent risk, make them define imminent in minutes and metrics, not vibes and adjectives. And when they say, this is equity, not law, you say, then document the equity. If we're doing best interests, put the definitions on paper. Who weighs them? How? What's the rubric? Inter-rater reliability. Because if equity is just discretion with a halo, then Parens Patriae is just power with PR. America killed the king, but we kept his crown and we put it on the head of the beast. In CPS court, that crown is invisible until you argue with it. Then it's the only thing you can see. The calendar reads November 2025. 900 years and the doctrine still sits on your family like a boot. The advocates selling you magic words are selling you comfort, not outcomes. Constitutional law matters, but venue, doctrine, and data decide your fate in this room. You don't win by chanting, you win by forcing translation. From myth to model, from story to schema, from sovereign to source code. Admin collects you, judicial authorizes you, and chancery deploys you. Parens Patriae owns the pipeline. Your job is to jam it with facts, with logs, and with model disclosures, with forced validation of every single data point. Because when you force them to prove what the algorithm assumed, their case starts bleeding out in real time. You thought that you might have needed better magic words, but you don't. You needed root access. Now you kind of have a map. Aim it at the crown and stop swinging at pawns. Until somebody pulls this plug, every courtroom wearing that invisible crown will keep pretending it's mercy. But we all know it's not mercy, it's maintenance. I'm not saying that our constitutional rights don't matter. I'm just saying maybe our founding fathers actually saw the design and how extremely profitable it was while sounding benevolent. So we fought over tea and taxes, but I'm sorry, but the king doesn't give a shit about your pamphlet.